Hi, this is MJ Fontaine, and today we're going to interview HKB FiNN. HKB FiNN is a spoken word artist with a difference. His work explores the connection between cultures, and his music combines elements of jazz, hip-hop and reggae into a unique blend, with poetry and occasional raps that cover a wide range of topics from love to spirituality. He creates incredible soundscapes that examine our collective roots.
Hi, my name is HKB FiNN. I'm a spoken word artist from London. I am a filmmaker, poet, some say urban griot, musician, composer, writer. I like to be creative. I like to express myself, and I like to learn new things, whether it's technology or methods of working, so that I can make my art more expressive and just share.
So tell me, what made you start this and why?
I think I actually started being creative because it was something that was natural to me as a child. If you gave me a task to do, I would find some other way to do it other than the way I was supposed to, and I just kind of stuck with it, really. And then as I got older, as you get older, you learn new things, and I was always very interested in new technology. So for me, this is the best time to be alive. There's so much stuff that you can do now that in previous eras it would take a lot of money and a lot of people to get done. But now, because of technology, we're able to do so much more with less. So it's I don't think I even answered your question.
No, you did. Right. But for me, what's the main component of your work that you find really expresses who you are? So is it the rapping, the poetry, is it the making of music, is it the getting the message across? What is it actually that taps into your essence?
I think all of it, because each aspect of the task has its own kind of learning curve, has its own route, as it were. So like when you're trying to write a poem, sometimes you're trying to get a point across, you're trying to get a feeling across. Other times you have a piece of music that may support a poem, but I think ultimately it's really just about finding creative harmony between the idea and the end result, and trying to find a place where you can make both things work. That is the thing that I love to do. For instance, I have a new piece, a new poem, which I've performed a couple of places. And as I performed the poem, I started to hear music, and so then I wrote some music to go with the poem. And then members of my band played the music, then we recorded it, and then I'm like, oh, this music is so awesome. Sorry, awful. The music is so awesome. I took the poem off, and that's just an instrumental. And that's just how the process. Sometimes you start with one thing and you end somewhere else, and I try to keep my heart open to the best that anything that I do can be. And sometimes what you really want isn't the best that something can be. And I think I'm lucky enough to be able to know when to switch off and let the thing that I'm creating be itself.
So you have a natural pace with the creative process and a trust.
Yes.
Is that what it is? Because what you've just said reminds me, I had a conversation with a client yesterday, and it was about her trusting the next step, and that whole process started off with a poem, but you ended up with a piece of music. And I don't know why we can't apply that to life. Sometimes just make one choice, make a step towards that choice, and then be open to what comes after that. Is a bigger gift. So you're quite spontaneous in terms of, well, it's kind of spontaneous and it's not, but you're open to your intuition. What kind of goal-setting process do you have then when you are planning an album or a tour or maybe a lecture? Because I know you do lectures, which we're going to talk about. What kind of goal-setting process do you actually have and follow?
I try to always keep in mind the point. What is the point of this thing? In regards to an album, I'm very lucky because I've worked in music and I've also worked in film. And in film, nothing is done without planning. Whatever the blockbuster or the small film, it's all done with a certain amount of pre-planning. So you work out, okay, so we've got a script, we've got actors, we've got locations, we've got permission to shoot in those locations. We want the film at the end to look bluish or green or whatever, color combination they want to use. And so they use a certain amount of planning as well as being spontaneous, but you use a certain amount of planning. So when I do an album project, I try to work with some sort of project name or project theme, and then the album itself becomes, the album is one piece of art, but the components of the album are different types of art. So you've got the compositional element, you have the structural element, which is the length of the record, what format it's going to be in, what's the maximum way that you can get something from that format. Say for instance, if the album is on digital, then it doesn't have to be limited to say 72 minutes. If the album is going to be digital, then the optimum sound quality you can get is about 72 to 74 minutes. And then after that, the sound quality drops. So you can get more minutes onto a CD, but if you want great quality, 72 minutes. So those are factors as well. And I guess just trying to say to yourself, okay, so it's January, I'd like to finish this record, I'd like this record to be out in September. So then I know, okay, if it's out in September, like, people can actually buy it. If I want it to be in a magazine, if I want to get magazine interviews, they'll have to have the CD 4 months before it's out. So that, because lots of magazines have a 3-month to 4-month period where they do their production. So like now we're in August, so they're working on the November issues of most magazines now. So, and magazines that are out now were worked on 3 to 4 months ago. So if September is when it's out, then 4 months before September it has to be physically done. But then having had experience, okay, so the recording process takes a certain amount of weeks, the mixing process takes a certain amount of weeks, the manufacturing process takes a certain amount of weeks. So you sort of work backwards, and then what will probably happen, in January you'll realize, I need to finish the album by April. So that it can be out in September as I need it to be. And if you go past April, then you know the album is now going to be out in October.
That from experience.
That's from
You've
experience.
walked that path, haven't you?
Because I've walked the path. So, because I have experience in releasing a project idea, to go from like a concept to a product. I know how long it takes. I also know that sometimes when you're involved in a creative process, you can get swept along by it without any grounding in quality or purpose, and you can get washed away if you're not careful. And so I always try and not be too judgmental, but reserve a certain amount of my intellect to analyze what I'm doing and say, as much as I might be emotionally engaged with something, is it any good? Is it achieving the point? Or is just like, masturbation? Am I just doing this because I can, or because these circumstances have allowed me to? That is a little bit too analytical for most people, but it works for me.
Well, because you've released how many albums now?
6 albums, but I've done about 12. The very first album I made never came out. So we composed, we recorded, we mixed, we mastered, and then when I listened to it, it wasn't good. It was okay. It technically was good, but it didn't hit the right spiritual points. It didn't hit the right marks, and I didn't want to put that type of energy in the world. I wanted something more reflective of me. And what I actually ended up doing was I put events that were happening to me at that time into my music. But those events, they're not me. They're just events. Like if someone calls you a name, or someone throws a rock through your window or something, you don't have to, and you write something. Let's say, people do it. They turn their art into draw from events, but I don't like to do that because I am more than my circumstance. I am more than my geography. I am just the latest version of millions of people throughout history. So I need to make sure my art touches on something universal and not something local or too personal.
Wow. So your decisions behind your work, what percentage is it based on intuition and logic, mental logic?
I'd say it's 70% intuition, 30% logic.
Excellent. So take note, people. Those of you who are trying to create music, like I said, it's learning how successful people function. And I think what you're saying about the logic, about the structure, about the planning, you're actually making it work. But what comes to my mind is, in terms of financially supporting yourself, how does that process fit in? Is it because you're really following, your path in a structured way, an intuitive way, that the finance comes towards you, or do you have to plan other ways of locating finance so you can actually be in the studio or you can create time to write? What is it you do?
Well, the first thing I do, which most people do, my parents did, is sacrifice. So I make certain sacrifices so that I can afford to pay for my own recordings, pay for my own productions. I also trust in a higher force. And because of that higher force, I'm able to move through the universe sometimes as if the walls aren't there. I don't know how it's done, I just trust and I move and it happens. And you do get the kind of feast and famine scenario where I'm always living from feast to famine, and from famine to feast, but I just keep on going. And I like to remind myself, why am I doing this? And the original idea for doing this was I wanted to create a body of work that represented myself, my generation, and my people. And I wanted to represent it positively, not negatively. I didn't want the things that I create to be merely reflective of the crimes against us as human beings or as people of African descent, whatever you want to call it. I wanted that to be just reflective of our realities, because when you live in somewhere like London, there's like a million stories that are never told, and I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I think there's so many amazing stories that need to be shared. For example, quick side subject, I have a friend, his girlfriend used to rob banks.
Oh, really?
In the 80s. She used to rob banks. Eventually she got caught and she went to jail, and then he came round to see me. He was really upset because she went to jail and then left him but they had a child, so he was bringing up his daughter, and his daughter was at that strange age where she was becoming a woman and she needed a woman's influence, but her mum's in jail. And so he was trying to be a dad and a mum, the way a lot of women have to be a mum and a dad to another young person, to their children. And he asked me to write a love poem for her. So I wrote a love poem for her, and that ended up becoming a song called Beat. The song called Beat did in 2002. An album called Vitalistics. Okay. And that's just how one really seemingly insignificant story became a song for me, and also really, say, in the early part of the noughties, that we call 2000 to 2010, but it was a really important part of my show because it was a great talking point, because it kind of looks at the whole idea, like our perceptions of single family, single parenthood. There's this understanding that it's always women, but it isn't always women. And then also there's this thing about crime life, people who are drawn to quick money, and then the payback for that. Like, she robbed banks for a long time, and everything was fine for a long time, and then you get caught because they will catch you. So if you're doing crime, you're not going to get away with it, believe me. That's just how it is. And people don't like to hear stuff like that, but it's a fact. But these are some of the dynamics of our modern lives, and these are the stories that I like to tap into, because it reminds us that as much as what she did was wrong,